The CPUSA has always been a haven for those who've completely abandoned the concept of revolution and, frankly, most of the time don't even understand the most basic concepts of it. The party is, of course, reduced to little more than a cheerleading squad for the Democratic Party, even going so far as to tell people to vote for the Democratic Party. But now, it appears the party has sunk to an even greater low. They are now endorsing transracialism. On June 22nd, People's World writer Rick Nagin penned an article titled Racial Dolezal and the Individual Right to Ethnic Self-Determination. In it, Reagan lays out that it is a right to determine what your ethnicity is. He begins with the precedent Mez Mesereau, a jazz musician and one-time manager for Louis Armstrong, insisted that he was a voluntary Negro. From there, he goes on to give utter nonsense examples of so-called transracialism. Children of white or very light-skinned parents are raised in black families who grow up and maintain African-American identities. The idea here is simply nonsense. Even if a white child is raised by black parents, they still receive white privilege. Simply being born into a black family or being adopted by a black family doesn't make you black, nor does it make them identify as that. They identify with their family. That does not change how society perceives them. They still receive all the benefits of white privilege. It is also extremely common for people to choose an ethnic identity different from the one their parents or the ones which they were raised. It happens every day when immigrants renounce their former citizenship and become sometimes quite vehemently citizens of the United States. It frequently happens when people marry someone of a different background and adopt that spouse's ethnicity. Growing up in a predominantly Jewish community, I knew people married to Jewish spouses while not converting to Jewish religion, dropped their Christian backgrounds and identified culturally as Jews. Adopting another religion is completely different with adopting another race. In these cases where people have adopted the traditions and whatnot of a spouse who happens to be Jewish, is not the same thing as suddenly becoming Jewish. They go along with these traditions as a part of family. That doesn't make them Jewish, nor does it make them think that they're Jewish. This example is complete and utter nonsense. Ethnic groups are a social and historical category which, unfortunately, dominate oppressive classes, have exploited as a means to divide and conquer and extract super profits. From the beginning of our country, the property classes promoted the racist concept of white superiority to rationalize the enslavement of people kidnapped from Africa, whose labor was the basis for the American economy until the end of the Civil War. The dominant racist view was that Africans and people of African heritage were genetically inferior. That is an extremely oversimplified view. In fact, it's much more complicated than that. Black people in America suffer from certain disadvantages because of this history. Now, to overcome them, you can't just say, oh, well, it's a social construct, so therefore it doesn't matter. I guess race is a social construct, but it's far more complicated than just saying, well, that shouldn't exist because whatever liberalism is going on in their head. Someone cannot just simply identify with that kind of historical oppression and are now, therefore, part of it. Repairing the damage done by racism requires us to focus on a particular marginalized group to undo the damage. Simply identifying as that is an insult to the people who are disadvantaged. It is an insult to the people who suffered from that racism. What the CPUSA is putting out here is complete and utter nonsense. I think this is really just a tactic by them to try to get more supporters. Let's appeal to the transracial people because we sure as hell aren't appealing to anyone else. Nagin has decided to insult African Americans by allowing a beneficiary of white privilege to invade their collective experience and identity. By doing so, they have rendered their suffering and experience meaningless, as now anyone can just identify with it. Do we honestly think that the reverse is also true? Can a black person who simply identifies as white suddenly gain white privilege? No, it's a one-way street. Rachel Dolezal is suffering from alienation, and even the most privileged people in the world can still suffer from it. Now, what she's doing is trying to escape that alienation by identifying as something that gives her a connection to other people, and in this case, the ridiculousness of transracialism. Rather than the CPUSA focusing on what's necessary to end the alienation that causes this problem to begin with, they decide to instead just go ahead and pander to this ridiculousness. But then again, this is also the same guy who said we should reject the concept of white privilege. We should stop pointing that out. because white people are exploited as workers too. Yes, he actually did say that, and yes, there is a link in the description for that. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the new face of the CPUSA. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them, then head over to my Patreon page and show your support. Or you can go to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share on various social media.